Yo, what up, a-holes? Thank you for tuning into the Holistic A-Hole podcast. My name is Eric Levi, and I'm the Holistic A-Hole. How the hell are you doing today? And thank you for tuning in here to episode number 62, where today we're going to talk about just a recent trip that I had out west, out there to the magical land of Sedona, Arizona. And normally I wouldn't just start breaking down random trips that I take, but Sedona is a special holistic place. And every time I go there, it's always a mixed bag of what's gonna go down, how I'm gonna feel in my holistic heart about this wonderful place they call Sedona. But before I do, I just want to say welcome to all the new listeners here of the Holistic A-Hole podcast. If you are a new listener and you found this, however the heck you found it, take a hot second, hit the subscribe button right there in your podcast player, on your iPhone. I'm not stupid. I have an iPhone too. I know what goes down. You don't have to fool me. You can just hit the subscribe button. It's the easiest thing you got to do all day. Hit the subscribe button in your iPhone, Apple podcast player. If you got an Android, you subscribe on Stitcher, subscribe on CastBox. If you're listening on Spotify, I don't really know how that works, but I'm imagining there's some way to get this podcast popping up in your feed. Either way, I release these twice a week. So if you love what you hear and you love the sound of my smooth, holistic voice, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can get these podcasts every time they come out, along with updates as to what's going on in my world, because boy, oh boy, are there some interesting things happening so soon that you don't want to miss, including all these crazy accents I do that don't really have much direction, and they seem to weave in and out of different languages and places of origin. So, and please do me a favor and leave a review on the iTunes. I'm going to stop. Leave a review on the iTunes if you love this. 5 stars. Don't fuck around with 4 stars. Don't be that guy. If you're going to give me 4 stars, give me 1 star. But go 5. Don't go 4. Go 5. 5 stars is what you want to do. Leave a nice little holistic note. Or, even better, hit me up on social media. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. Not much Snapchat, but it's all Holistic A-Hole. Just go in those places. Look for me. If it's Instagram, what I love what people do is take a screenshot of the podcast playing in your feed, and then I'll know that I'm seeing the love from you. Man, so if you haven't caught on yet in this episode, I am feeling just real loopy right now. I caught a red-eye flight last night. And personally, look, man, I know what you're going through right now. I hate it when podcasters talk about their flights and their travel and, how they're just road weary from having to sit on a plane for 5 hours, eating snacks and pretzels and getting dehydrated and then filling up their water with nasty airport water. Is there anything worse than airport water, by the way? Here's my 1986 comic in a sports coat and bowling shirt coming out. Hey, man, is there anything worse than airport water? Hey, yo. Try the veal. There is nothing worse than airport water. I don't trust that shit. I wouldn't give that to my fucking worst enemy unless I wanted to waterboard them, and I'd be like, take this. If I was going to waterboard somebody, and I'm not totally ruling out the possibility of me ever having to waterboard somebody, but if I ever had to waterboard somebody, it would be with fucking airport water. It is just horrific. That is just the lowest form of water. Like, they know you're going on a plane. They know that you're doing something that, naturally isn't supposed to happen to your body. You're going up 30,000 feet in the air in a pressurized cabin. Your body's just going through absolute chaos. You just walk through a full body scanner that just zapped you full of radiation. And now they're like, hey, man, you want some fucking water that is somewhat treated and tastes completely different from all the other water that you've had prior to walking into this airport. There's most likely high levels of fluoride and chlorine, and we're using this water to dumb you down so you can buy more of our shit snacks on the plane and watch our overpriced movies and maybe even buy a ticket to somewhere that you don't even want to go. Try that good old-fashioned airport water. And while you're at it, buy a neck pillow because you can't have enough neck pillows. Oh man, I'm really going crazy. But basically, what happened was I traveled. I went to Arizona. That's where the holistic a-hole, the origin story began. That's where I'm from. And I go back there once or twice a year to visit family. And I always go to Sedona. And last night, I took a red-eye flight. Last night out of Sky Harbor Airport, had a connecting flight in Chicago. Red eyes are just brutal, and was planning on sleeping. I got a sick neck pillow. I'm not going to lie. I got a nice neck pillow, but it was just like the perfect storm of just, fucking insomnia-inducing events, insomnia-inducing circumstances. First things first, in an aisle, not an aisle. I'm in the row in front of the aisle seats, so you can't, I didn't know this, but you can't lean your seat back. So I'm sitting there for the first 20 minutes of the plane just fucking, just pressing like the mighty Thor into the little button on the seat, trying to get this thing to go back, hitting the flight attendant button, just like, dude, why doesn't this go back? And one of the nice flight attendants on United Airlines, which apparently has a really bad rap for throwing people off their planes, but not this guy. And maybe they should have, because I'm an asshole, especially when I can't lean my seat back. She was like, "Yeah, you can't lean the seat back when you're in front of a emergency exit row." Meanwhile, the people in the emergency exit row are just living the dream. They're just in a sandals resort, just all sprawled out, comfortable, plenty of leg room, able to recline their seats back, knowing that in the case that the plane does go down, they're going to have to be a hero, but there's a 99.99999 ad infinitum chance that the plane is not going to go down, and all they're going to have to do is just lounge back and watch United free Wi-Fi entertainment. So I couldn't scoot my seat back, and if you've never been able to scoot your seat back and you have a neck pillow, it's a nightmare. You're all scrunched up. My back started hurting. I mean, the luxury of being able to push your seat back, it is profound. So that was one. And then two was a fucking crying baby, a little baby in the seat right in front of me, dude. Right in front of me on a red-eye flight. What terrible parent brings a baby on a red-eye flight? Now, I know we've all been there on the flights and the babies and the crying, and you're like, this fucking baby. But nowhere should a baby never be more than a regular flight, more than a movie theater, more than the back of a Arby's kitchen or anywhere. Should a baby never be is on a red-eye flight, because a red-eye flight is specifically made for people to sleep. They even keep the lights off so you can sleep. And you think the baby doesn't sleep in its crib. You think the baby's gonna sleep on a fucking airplane. If you're a parent and you bring your baby on a red-eye flight, fucking CPS should take your baby away, because you are a terrible parent. I mean, seriously, like, just give the kid heroin now. Fucking keep it out of high school. Just send it to military school. Get off the plane, give it a cigarette, send it to military school, because that kid is going to be a problem, because you don't love it and you don't love people around you. So, needless to say, I am going off of basically no sleep. And if you know anything about me, sleep is extremely important to me, especially in the last year or two. It's become like one of my main focal points of trying to master. I wish it was just like I was younger. I used to be able to sleep in the middle of a fucking hallway, in a frat house, in a hurricane. Didn't matter. I could sleep anywhere, in any position, anytime, light, dark, doesn't matter. But now it's like, as I get older, these little sleep issues are creeping in, and going off of no sleep. This is not my ideal situation, but no coffee, no green tea, no matcha. I'm just going for it. This is what we do because the holistic a-holes need me. And not to mention too, I know I've been getting a lot of static, a little bit of shade thrown my way here online. People angry that I've kind of gotten off the holistic a-hole podcast posting schedule. Again, it was due to traveling and not bringing my equipment because, quite frankly, I travel light, bro. I travel light, and I'm not going to bring all my gear with me to record podcasts. Did my best to get them pre-recorded. Daddy's working on a bunch of different stuff right now, so I'm doing my best. But I'm going to make it up to you. I think this week we'll get 3 out. So, I shouldn't overpromise like this, but I'm going to do my best. So just hang in there with me. You know I love you, and I'm going to do everything I can to make you happy because that's what holistic a-holes do. So I didn't get on this to talk about my, traveling woes. I got on this podcast today to talk about a little place in Arizona that I like to go and call Sedona. So it's weird because I grew up in Arizona, and Sedona was always there. The Grand Canyon was always there, and those are probably the two biggest touristy places in Arizona. When I worked at Enterprise Rent-A-Car right out of college, people would fly into Sky Harbor Airport, and then I would rent them a car, and I would say 70% of the people that flew in, they'd need directions to Sedona and the Grand Canyon, without fail. It's a beautiful place. You never been there, man. You got it's the Red Rocks. It's the canyon, Red Rocks, and it's basically been commandeered by this. What do you say? Like this community of just weird hippies. And it's been like that for years, because what they say is the Sedona Red Rocks have a special power in them. They call it the vortex. I'm still not exactly clear what a vortex even is, but what it sounds like, it's just like a field of energy, and you could soak up the energy, and then it gives you all these powers. You could shoot spider webs out your dick, whatever. But it's a kind of thing where for a long time I would have been like, that's stupid, that's dumb, that's bullshit, stop saying that, you're just making everything weird. But when I started going back up there, since I've lived out of Arizona now it's getting close to 10 years since I've moved out of there, I crave that stuff now. It's just crazy how your complete disposition switches to where, when you live somewhere, like I'd imagine it's kind of like this for New Yorkers. Like when you live in New York, the last thing you want to do is go to the Statue of Liberty. You never want to go to the Statue of Liberty. Even though it's free to go there or to take the ferry and go by it, you don't want to go to the Statue of Liberty. You're not going down to see the Wall Street Bull. You're staying steer fucking clear of Times Square and Central Park. But I think there's that thing where you come back and that you miss some of that stuff, or you see a lot of New Yorkers walking around, or at least I do, and they wait for family members to come, and then this is when they do all their touristy stuff. I mean, that's how Sedona and the Grand Canyon were for me. The first time I went back, or not the first time, but the first time I took the lovely Miss A-hole back, I mean, she fell in love with Sedona. And it was like I was looking at it through her eyes, and it was like this fun, cool thing. It was so interesting, and this is when I started getting into it, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess Sedona really was cool, even though I never came up here. And so, over the years, I go back, and it's kind of like a yearly tradition now where we'll go back and we'll go to, I'll visit friends in Phoenix. I go down to Mexico, and then I go to Sedona. Or me and the lovely Miss A-hole go to Sedona. And it's just such a nice, chilled out vibe, no matter what I'm going to say in this podcast. Just the thing I want to lead with is I do really love Sedona. But the more I go back, the more I'm kind of like catching on to a different shade of the shit. Because like I said, when I lived there, didn't give didn't give two flying monkeys throwing crap against the walls about Sedona. But then I started going back and I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. The vortex, you go in the vortex, you go, you put your feet in the dirt, you ground, you get the energy from the earth just seeping into your feet and then just revitalizing all your, the oxygen in your body and the iron and the white blood cells and everything is just working together and you're breathing it all in and it's just so awesome. And oddly enough, like every time I went to a vortex or I'd go to Sedona and I'd come back, like for a couple years I was having some pretty like epic not realizations, but just kind of like transformations, like the first time I went back and I went to Sedona, it was like, I went, I don't know if I meditated or not, but I definitely was just there and just kind of getting into the vortexes a little bit and just kind of weirding out a little bit. And then I came back and then my whole life changed. This is when I was living in Boston. I came back from Sedona and I was back in Boston, and the day I got back from traveling, I lost my job. Just like that. And it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. It was the greatest thing that ever happened to me because I lost my job and then I got unemployment. And I used that and moved to New York City. And here I am. And still to this day, it's the greatest move I could have ever made. I love New York. I love living here. There's nowhere else, at least in the United States, I could live. And then I would go back and I'd still have these kind of like, it felt like just every time I'd go, I'd come back. It was like a new metamorphosis. One time I went and then I came back and then that's when like the holistic metamorphosis happened. One time I went and came back and I just had a lot of confusion and then, I finally found a job that I liked in New York to help me make money while I did other stuff. It was like every time I went, it came back. And so I really buy into kind of like this weird power, this weird manifestation power that going into like these vortexes or going to a place like Sedona has. But the dark side of Sedona is all the people who take what I'm saying and have, I don't know if they have similar experiences, but they just get weird, like really weird, to the point where you're like, man, this is just too much. Like I like to get weird. I like to get holistic weird. I like to brew my own kombucha. I like to learn about health. I like to get, do a little bit of, just as much as this phrase makes me want to vomit, but I like to do a little biohacking stuff. You know what I mean? I like to really explore my consciousness and go to yoga and meditate and do kirtan singing and, breath work and, shavasanas and all this stuff. But I'm also a normal dude, kind of, not really, but I'm a pretty like, mainstream dude. I know mainstream stuff. I have mainstream friends. I don't walk around. You would never know that I'm like a real holistic a-hole just walking through the streets. Most people, I think, look at me and they're like, this guy's a fucking douchebag. And then people who know that I'm a holistic a-hole are like, dude, this guy is a real douchebag. But, I keep it pretty level. And I think, my own personal opinion, I think that's the way it's supposed to be. I think that's why I do this. I think that's what being holistic in a place like New York City teaches you, which is you can be a holistic a-hole and you don't have to be a fucking weirdo. You don't have to be a smelly hippie. You don't got to be a monk. You don't got to shave your head and have a little weird ponytail and, sit on the sidewalk under a tree and sing Hare Krishna with a homeless fucking dog. You don't need none of that stuff. You just be a regular ass person who meditates and, wears crystals under their clothes. I remember when I went to one shop when I was buying the lovely Miss A-hole some jewelry. It was one of these kind of like made from earth places, and they have all these like kind of like funky, earth stones and diamonds, and they put them in and they make really nice jewelry out of it all. And I was talking to the lady, and she's like, oh, yeah. I mean, this is like lower Manhattan. And she's like, yeah, I have like Wall Street guys come in here all the time. And they have crystals. They wear them under their clothes because they believe in the spirituality. And I don't know if we've talked about this on the podcast, but money has a spirituality in itself that really gets overlooked. And I think is extremely important to understand. And if we haven't talked about this, I'll do a podcast about it, because this is a thing I find fascinating. And, is that little gray zone between like the black and white of money and capitalism and greed and all that stuff. But where the hell was I going? Oh, yeah. But living in New York has taught me that you can be a holistic a-hole, and you don't got to be a fucking weirdo. You can be a normal person. You could be a goddamn, fucking landlord or a pipe fitter, or a taxi driver or whatever. And you could be a fucking weird holistic a-hole. But at the same time, it's like you go back to your normal life, and it's almost like you take those lessons you learn from focusing on your breath and chanting and doing yoga and floating in a float tank or whatever your your mindfulness practice is, and you just apply that to your life. I think that's the most enjoyable part, actually, of being holistic and spiritual, is the fact that when you apply this stuff to your normal life, you start to see all the shit change, and the things that you struggled with become easier. You don't have to give it up because you want to just be a weird hippie. You apply it to your normal life. And it makes, to me, that's what the practice is all about. The practice, what muddies the water for people is when you talk to somebody about meditation, or you talk to somebody about yoga. Meditation, not so much, because it's become so mainstream at this point. But I really feel like yoga is that thing that, people hear it, or they even teach it, and they just make it this fucking crazy thing that I don't really think it is. I take yoga from Dharma Mitra, Sri Dharma Mitra, here in Manhattan. He's one of the top yoga teachers in the world. He's a yoga master. It's like every time I'm there, there's like, he's got to get out, early so he can go do a TV interview or something. This guy is like legit. He's a fucking 80-year-old dude, standing on his head, doing back bends and bridge poses. And I mean, you wouldn't even know he was 80. He's got the flexibility of a fucking, like 21-year-old gymnast. It's unlike anything you've ever seen. And even though he's, I think he's Indian. I don't know what part Indian he is. I know there's like different parts. I couldn't tell you what part, but he's like the real deal. And even he's not a fucking weirdo. Like, he's extreme. He's funny. Like, he cracks jokes in the class, and he is just a regular dude. He talks about how he's just addicted to his iPhone, and he watches garbage American TV and eats, he eats good vegan food around New York City. But he's not like lighting incense and wearing bandanas and sitting in chanting circles and sharing what we learned from our consciousness and all this dumb shit. This is what you find in Sedona. This is what Sedona is. You drive down the street, there's only like really two streets. There's 179 and there's 89. And, those in the intersection of those two is like the touristy area. And then you drive down like 89, and it's just all these fucking crystal shops and tarot card readers and, all this just supernatural bullshit. And look, man, they got me one time, not the last, I think the last time we went, it was like 2 years ago or something. Me and Miss A-Hole, we walked into one of these crystal shops, bro, and we dropped almost $200 on crystals. And for like a couple months, I was wearing my crystals. I was wearing a crystal under my shirt, and then I think the lanyard broke or something, and I just stopped. And I do believe in the power of crystals. My first holistic a-hole YouTube video was about crystals and stones. I do believe they hold power, but at the same time, I think enough is enough. I think at some point you just oversaturate the market, and it just becomes a thing where it's like, oh, this is like a tourist experience now. This is like Times Square. This is like going into Times Square and getting like a caricature of yourself drawn with the lights of Broadway and stuff behind you, and then getting charged $30 for that shit, or like having to take your picture with the naked cowboy or Spider-Man or SpongeBob or something. I think it's the same exact thing, and it really dilutes the importance of what these different teachings have within them, Like, I don't know anything about Reiki, but I also know Reiki isn't that old. I think they started doing Reiki like in the 90s or something. I don't think it's that old, But you would think it's like this ancient spiritual thing, man. Like, we were walking, I forget the name of this, because we've basically hiked every single hike you can do in Sedona. But there's like this hike of like this temple or something, and it's all about Buddhism. It's like this. It's not a Buddhist temple, but it's like a Buddhist shrine or something right there in the middle of Sedona, with like the Buddha and these different statues. And I'm not an expert on Buddhism by any means. I literally know almost nothing about Buddhism, but I do know that I do have a little bit of training in a meditation style that's very similar to Buddhism. But even when I was in Thailand, going around to these different Buddhist temples and seeing statues of the Buddha, and then telling you, like, you can buy a statue of the Buddha, but you can't take that shit on the plane. You can't take it back to your house because it's, like, way disrespectful. But yet you go into these shops all over Sedona, and it's like you can buy little Buddha statues that people get, and they put incense around it, and they think, what the hell are you doing? You're insulting the Buddha. You're not supposed to do that shit. I think. Yeah, you're not supposed to do that stuff. You're not supposed to have it. You're not supposed to, like, you're supposed to just, like, I don't think people know what they're doing when it comes to the Buddha. That's what I'm saying, especially us white people. We have no idea what we're doing with the Buddha. We just know that, hey, man, I like curry chicken, and I like, buckwheat pancakes, so I should probably have a Buddha in my house, And so there's like this quote-unquote sacred shrine of the Buddha on a hill in Sedona, and people are going there and they're taking these pictures, and they're like trying to meditate, or they're doing the meditation pose and then taking pictures and all this stuff. The fucking thing has been there since 2003. It's only 15 years old. This isn't like some sacred site, sacred ancient site, it's not like a sacred ancient temple. There's like a quote-unquote medicine healing circle there that was laid out by the Native Americans, I think the Apaches or somebody, and people like walk around it, and people who are like, I think, really sick do that, people who have cancer and debilitating diseases, like, they'll go do this stuff, and they'll be like, there, that'll work. And it's like, no, dude, seriously, don't do that. Don't confuse the message. Like, this is a supplement. This is not or is it a compliment? It's a compliment. It's not a supplement. This is a compliment. This is not supposed to take the place of what you should be doing. And I wouldn't put that much weight into the effectiveness of it having. It's just a thing you go do. It's a picture you take. It's just a stupid fucking thing that they just feed to people. And, people's own superficial bullshit, we're like, oh, man, I'm going to take a picture of the Buddha in Sedona. Boom, there it is. I'm spiritual. There's this really good vegan restaurant I like to go to. It's not vegan, but it's like vegetarian. And they have like these, people come in these chanting circles and these like yoga groups. And there's like this one dude, I don't remember his name. It's like one of these long kind of like Indian spiritual leader, spiritual teacher, yoga teacher names. He's like a monk. He's got like the monk. He's a white dude. He's a white dude who looks like he gave up his job in an accounting office, or working in some fucking dry ass office job, and then bought like a long orange shirt with orange loose pants, shaved his head, and now he's a freaking monk or a yoga teacher, drinking tea, not having sex. But I don't believe that shit for a second. I don't believe that shit for a second. I believe people like this are the most dangerous of the yoga teachers, because I'm not going to accuse the guy of anything or anybody of any of this stuff, but you know, a lot of people get into this for the wrong stuff, and it's very easy to manipulate people with some of this stuff and be like, yeah, man, like, can you see your third eye? That's your higher intelligence. So now you're one with the world. Where does the world end and you begin, man? Like that sort of shit. There's no basis for it. There's no science for it. There's no spiritual teachings that you're quoting. You're just making up your own shit as you go along, just to get people to kind of conform to this, like almost like a cult, you know, almost like a weird little mini religion. And you know, I never feel this when I go to yoga or do like a kirtan in yoga class led by actual real spiritual teachers. But then you get these like hacks out in places like Sedona, and people are so vulnerable because of like the whole vortex and all the colors and the beauty and the serene nature and all this stuff. And it's really easy to get sucked into this stuff. But then you just see like these weird hippies walking around that they don't shower, and they're probably all stoned, you know, not that I'm judging, but you know, it's like if there's one place I draw the line is with weed, is I try not to bring it into my spiritual practice, because spiritual practice is not about weed. It's about being as mindful as possible. And I find weed really is like an escape, you know? I think it's a thought enhancer, but I also think it's an escape. And I think it also works as a complement, not a supplement. You shouldn't be, I don't think, personally, in a meditation, I don't think weed has any business in a meditation. But the message gets so skewed, you know? People get high, and it's like, and light incense, and like, man, we're doing it, bro. This is what we're doing. We just quit our jobs, you know? And our dads, like, they totally get it, so they're going to pay our rent so we can, like, live in Sedona and then go to Burning Man and Coachella and like just wear bandanas and learn to play the bongos and, you know, like sing these chants and then write these powerful words that are so important to me and all the other people who think like this, and they talk in whispery tones because they're so relaxed that they can't speak above a certain volume. And then you have to like put your ear in closer and be like, what did you say? I can't hear you because we're so chilled out. That to me is not spiritual. To me, that's just escapism. That's just not dealing with shit the way it's supposed to be dealt with. That's just like, life's too hard. I want to go live in Sedona, smoke weed, and do chanting circles. Or, you know, fucking meditate in a vortex or something. To do what? To earn more time, to not contributing jack shit to society. You know, to me, that's where the spirituality comes in. To me, the spirituality comes in when you find that place in your heart that you can give out to the world. It's not about being chilled out, man, and like trying to expand your consciousness. It's about finding in your heart and finding the service that you can provide. And then at the same time, the recognition that you're on the right path a lot of times is the money you make, you know? This is why people are very confused when they find out that, like, I'm a vegan and I meditate and I do this podcast and I'm holistic, but then I also love money and I love capitalism and I'm very conservative on a lot of different issues. They don't make the connection, but what they're missing is the fact that when you are truly holistic, when you are truly working from your higher consciousness and you're working from your heart and not your head, when you're working out of your heart chakra, You're doing things in a sense that will make you money because you're providing services for people, and people will pay for services. People will pay for the service you provide. Going back just a few minutes ago, we were talking about the Wall Street guys. Even though Wall Street, they got the reputation of being scum, they get rewarded quite handsomely. And a lot of money is spiritual. Money is not a real thing. Money is a spiritual thing. It's a thought. It's an agreement. It's a human agreement. It's a human agreement of being a reward for providing a good or service. We just muddy the waters with all the superficial bullshit of it. But really, the most spiritual people are the richest people. The richest people are the most spiritual people. Listen to someone like Tony Robbins talk or Richard Branson. These are people who are like fucking just hardcore spiritual. As a matter of fact, the spiritual center, the meditations, the beautiful state that Tony Robbins talks about, that's the shit that I went and did, in India. It's not Buddhist, it's not Oneness University, it's its own thing, So my point is when all these fucking people that you find in places like Sedona or maybe like upstate, I think there's like a hippie communes in like upstate New York, and like all these people who just, they're who you think of when you think about like meditation and yoga, yet represent such a tiny portion of that population. At the same time, they're the ones who are just muddying the waters and ruining the message for everyone. And I don't want to say it pisses me off, because it doesn't. I kind of look at that. I'm like, oh man, like stop it. It's just overboard. But at the same time, like I understand there's a place for it. I understand that everyone comes from their own background, their own set of circumstances, and sometimes you just want that kind of community of people who just won't judge you and will care for you and love you. Even though I find some of that stuff to be a little phony myself. But I do understand there's a place for it. But I guess what I'm trying to say is being a New York a-hole has really ruined me from buying into any of that bullshit. Because I know there is the side where you can be a real New York holistic a-hole, and that's totally fine. It's totally fine. In fact, I need the holisticness to keep my brain level here in New York. How many people move to a place like New York or LA and then just lose their minds and need to go on psychoactive drugs because they're depressed or anxious, and there's just too much bearing down on you, In a place like this is where this shit's so important. So to avoid from droning on and on and on about the same thing, I guess my point in all this is you don't have to be a weird fucking hippie to be a holistic a-hole. So never think that. Just incorporate this shit into your normal life and watch your life change. Watch yourself manifest the things you want. Most importantly, watch yourself slowly but surely get off of all the drugs that you feel like you need to get through the day. And your life changes. And you don't got to go buy fucking tie-dye shirts and, stop wearing deodorant and put fucking, braids in your hair or whatever. You can just be a normal person, and that's totally fine. So that's where we're going to end it today, you guys. Thanks for listening. I am curious what you think about this stuff. Are you, in your holistic journey dealing with this sort of thing? Are you becoming one of these weird hippie a-holes? Are you just a holistic a-hole like me, where you're just a normal person who loves the spiritual side of life but just doesn't get into the weirdness of it? Or you like to get weird but you're able to just kind of still be normal? I'm curious what you think. Send me your thoughts on Twitter. Send me your thoughts on Instagram at holistic a-hole, on all these places. Facebook, holistic a-hole. Shoot me an email, holistic.a.hole@gmail.com. Let me know what you think of all this stuff. And keep listening. If you're new here, check out some of the previous episodes. Share these with your friends on social media. And keep listening. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.